there's a lot to my upbringing that I attribute to my dad, and I was fortunate. And I don't want people to think that if you didn't have a solid dad, you can't be a solid person yourself. I just happen to be fortunate enough to have a role model around me that I could kind of emulate. But the Primerica side of this is controversial because I used to say to whoever would listen to me, my life is what happens in between the meetings, not at the meetings, right? And I think that was controversial because I won awards. I think we all want to be recognized. I think we all want to be praised, and it does feel good. But that's not what motivates me. What motivates me is what my family thinks of me and my friends think of me. And I lost my mom this summer, and I was with both my parents when they took their last breath. Which is really a powerful thing to be able to say. And it came from a lifelong pursuit of freedom, right? So I came from a father who came from nothing, went into the military, got married at 22 years old, went into the military, was an Air Force guy, came out of the military, went to work for corporate America and got stuck in that trap of corporate America because he had 3 kids quick and had to take the salary, but he was always entrepreneurial spirited. And I knew that he was a caged animal, right? Like my dad was a freaking caged animal. He always made somebody else look good, but in the corporate world, he was the threat, right? So when he would run up to that place where the only place to go was to get the guy's job, they'd abuse him and he'd go somewhere else. So I watched a rebel being chained to a desk, so maybe I was formulated in that regard, thinking I don't want to be trapped in a world where I feel like a caged animal, right? The other thing is my dad was a funny dude and everything about his life was given to other people and making sure. I watched my father. When people walked away from my dad, they felt better about themselves than they did when they walked up to him, right? So my dad went out of his way to make other people feel good in his presence. So I picked up that. Like that looked fun and that looked good. And the other thing was my dad was a badass, right? But never had to talk about being a badass. You just knew it. And his kindness far exceeded the fact that you knew that he could beat the snots out of you if need be, and was not afraid to do so if there was a threat to his family, right? A gentleman with kindness and dignity, respect for women, which I don't think is a terrible thing. Like now, if you're masculine, you're toxic. My dad was a kind, masculine man who cared about taking care of the people around him that he loved, and that sphere expanded to other people and who he cared for, right? And I watched that, man. And so that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a version of that. And I wanted to be a strong dude that I knew I could take care of myself. I knew I could take care of the people, but that wasn't my lead. My lead wasn't Bravio's bullshit, trying to act like something, because I think if you walk with the grace of God and you feel good about who you are, you don't have to prove that to anybody else, right? I think insecure people have to show off to make people, to cover for their own insecurities and act in a way that they want people to perceive them as being people who know who they are. You ever run into guys who go, you know who I am? I've run into a lot of those guys in my life. My answer to that is, are you having memory issues? Like, do you need me to actually tell you who you are? Shouldn't you know that yourself? Right.
That's big.
So,
that's big.
So I was always content in knowing that I didn't care about what other people thought about me as long as I felt good about me and what I was doing was good, not bad. Right.
Yep.
I don't think it's good to feel good about yourself if you're a scoundrel, but if you feel like you're giving it all and leaving it all on the court or on the field of, then you're always going to get criticized. So my Primerica career was, my dad, said, you got to get a good job, got to get your foot in the door. You got to work your way up the ladder of success, because that's what he knew.
Mm-hmm.
I got a job on Wall Street. I was a solid C student. I sent a bunch of resumes out back in the day. I found out early on that when the letter responding to your resume says, "We regret to inform you," it usually isn't followed by a very large salary offer, right? So I went down to Wall Street one day, and I started knocking on doors in these gigantic buildings. And I walked into a brokerage house, and I asked what the name of the manager was. At like 7:30 in the morning, there was a receptionist there. They gave me the name, and I said, "Can I talk to them?" They said, "Do you have an appointment?" I said, "No." They said, "Well, the markets are going to open soon. If you don't have an appointment," I said, "Would you mind if I waited until the end of the day?" And so it'd be like Jeff Fields, that was the manager, found out there was some 22-year-old kid sitting in the lobby from 7:30 until 5. And the guy brought me into the office and said, "Hey, you're either mentally damaged or you're willing to do whatever it takes to win. I'm willing to take a chance." And that's how I got my first job, which was an entry-level position. They made me do cold calls all day long. They paid me $800 a month. I made money for others, and I soon realized that I did not like working for other people. Eventually, I got asked to leave that firm because I threatened to throw I was late to work twice. There was a fire in the PATH train that went into New York City, that went into the World Trade Center. I had to walk back to New Jersey through rat-infested waters and got to my desk late. And he said, "You're late." And I said, "I don't know if you read about the fire in the PATH train." He said, "I don't want to hear your excuse." A week later, there was a snowstorm that caused me to have a 3.5-hour commute. And he said, "That's strike number 2." And I said, "Well, save strike number 3 because I quit." And he said, "Well, you can't quit. You got to put your 2 weeks notice in." And I said, "We're on the 55th floor. Here's my 2 weeks notice, and don't stand by any open windows." And apparently that gets you an armed escort out of the building.
That's awesome.
So the crazy
and
thing
you're
is,
kind of a big guy, so he probably took it serious.
By the way, I look like a girl right now compared to what I looked like back then. I had to get a stretchy suit. I had to get an elastic suit to fit me. I had like a 54-inch expandable spandex suit was the first suit I bought.
That's funny.
When I came home, and my dad says, "What are you doing home?" And I said, I got let go, and I left. And he goes, you never leave a job until you have a job. And so he had a tremendous work ethic. I took another position as selling the office automation equipment. At that time, my buddies started Primerica. They had zero credibility with me. Jim Meyer, Carrie Ginsberg, you guys know those names. But they stayed with it. And after about a year, I learned early on in your life, you may not know what you want to do, but learning what you don't want to do is also motivating.
For sure.
And so I learned I could not be told when to go have a cup of coffee, how many days I could take to bereavement days. I had 2 personal days. I took one. They asked me what it was for. I said, "Doesn't that defy the definition of personal?" If I'm going to tell you what, if you really need to know, I have a boil on my ass that needs to be lanced. But it's personal. That's why I need the day off.